My name is Albert Chester. I've been knowing Mr. Keith for several years. I first met Mr. Keith in Phoenix, Illinois, at a club called the White Rose. He was performing. He was a singer. A lot of people don't know that he was a singer also. He's a performer also. I was in a singing group called the Lyrics. When I was in the military, Mr. Gordon Keith managed the Lyrics. Where I first had a connection with Mr. Joe Jackson's words. We had a group called the Lyrics, and we auditioned for Abe Saperstein. Abe Saperstein was the owner of the Harlem Globetrotters. We met him on the south side of Chicago at a club named Scotty's. Then he was trying to get into the music business, so we auditioned the Lyrics. Joe Jackson had a singing group. He also auditioned with us. And Joe Mays, the guy who spin the top, he also auditioned. Now, out of the 3 auditions, he chose the Lyrics, which was our groups, because he really was looking for a young group. Joe Jackson was older than we were, you know, and plus they were a gospel group. As I recall, we did one show with the Harlem Globetrotters, a halftime show in D.C. For Mr. Keith, though, I've been knowing Gordon many years, and I have a lot of respect and regards for Gordon, because basically been the same person all his life. He's an honest person. He trusts in the Lord. He tried to help people. He's always been this type of person. He was when I met him, he is now. So anything Mr. Keaton said, he's not a liar. That's the thing, he's not a liar. If Gordon tell you something, you can bet your money. And this is the way he's carried himself on, that I've known him since at least, I would say 1965. And it's 2014. So I've known Mr. Keith a long time. And we've been friends all that time. We never had a crossword. So I have a lot of respect and regards for Mr. Gordon Keith. One other thing I would like to say, when I got out of service in 1967, in November 1967, in 1968, I think it was early 68, you know, I heard so much about the Jackson 5, and I decided to go see the Jackson 5, and I saw them at the Regal Theater. And as I recall, they was under the supervision of Mr. Gordon Keith. And that's all I ever heard was Gordon Keith and the Jackson 5. My contact with Ben Brown was, he was married to one of my classmates. So I knew Ben Brown. I knew him when I saw him. They actually used to live, as I recall, not far from where my mom lived, on 15th Avenue or 14th, right off of Jefferson or something. And he would come to reunions with his wife. So basically that's all I know about him. I never contacted him with Mr. Keith, you know, put it together, because back then I knew Gordon. I didn't put it together. I found out years later that they had some kind of business relationship. But basically, whenever I heard something about the Jackson 5, it was always Gordon Keith managed and recorded the Jackson 5.
Wow. Okay, and so that's pretty much, you don't too much know nothing about Ben Brown, nothing like that?
No, I really don't. I really don't. I really don't. Other than I know who Ben Brown is. If I saw him, he walk in his room, I can say that's Ben Brown. You know, because he was in the hood, you know.
Could you share what it was like performing with Mr. Keith on stage?
Well, again, we didn't perform. When my group, see, I saw Mr. Keith as a performer. When I saw him, see, Gordon sang too. When I first saw him, Mr. Gordon Keith at the White Rose in Phoenix, Illinois, we were on the same show. We was performing, and Mr. Keith was performing. He was the Iceman. So he was doing Jerry Butler that night. So a lot of people don't know that Mr. Keith was a performer too. He was a singer, so he knew the business. He knew, you know, He was a singer just like everybody else. But like I say, during this time, when he handled the lyrics, I was in the military. I got drafted, so I was gone 2 years. And after that, we kind of fell apart because over time, things happen, you know, and you fall apart. So we never did get back together. We never did get back together.
Okay. And when you got back home, of course, this was like 2 years afterwards, the fact that the Jacksons were signed to Motown upon that.
Well, at the time, I saw it all happen. So
would you like to share that?
When they used to do shows out at Gilroy Stadium, and I guess Motown came in town, and this is a story I heard that Diana Ross saw them. Now Diana Ross discovered the Motowns, and next thing you heard was Richard Gordon Hedges coming to town and all this crazy stuff. But I do know that therefore only person I associated with them before that was Gordon Keefe. Okay, that's the only person associated. When that happened, Big O, then all these people started coming out the woodwork talking about they discovered the Jackson 5.
And they were signed to Motown. Did he ever share with you his heartaches, his pain? And if so, what was it like? Did you see him go through some things? Did you see him, was he angry? Was he upset? Was he bitter? Did he want to do something? What did you experience as his friend?
I could always tell that this thing was eating Gordon up. I could always tell. I've had conversation with Gordon, and he tear up, So I always knew, and I admire him. He's a very strong person because at one time, I kind of thought Gordon was going off because it got to him, I know, at one time. And then I think eventually what he did is came to the reality that he have to do something. I tried to talk to Gordon about writing a book back in the 80s at McDonald's. We was talking back then, computers came along and WordPress. I said, Gordon, you need to write a book, but he didn't listen to me. That was the whole conversation at the time about the Jackson 5. It was always this conversation. And it's like getting stabbed in the back. When you get stabbed in the back, you may not die, but that scar is always there. And the pain is always there. It's not going to go away. And chances are, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to remove that pain. And that's no life.
What do you think about the whole Ben Brown thing? I know you don't really know him, but I'm pretty sure you've heard of him, right? And what he did. What do you think about that? With him portraying to be Mr. Keefe, or portraying that he was the one that had the Jacksons under the label. What do you think about that?
Well, I've heard some ugly things about Ben Brown. Not from Gordon Keefe. From other people about his wife. Things like that. So I never really had a good view of Ben Brown. Although a lot of things I heard, I couldn't say, they were true or they were false. But I heard a lot of things that paint him as a kind of ugly character. Kind of person that you couldn't trust too much. And he was a status seeker. Okay, he's a status seeker. People like that who go through life they'll do anything to get where they want to go. They will stab you in the back. They would do anything. So I look at him as a status seeker who rode the back of Mr. Gordon Keefe, really, to get where he was trying to get. And he stabbed him in the back because they was in the same record company and associates, and I don't know other way to put it.
Well, what were some of the things you heard about Ben Brown?
Well, just positive, negative things. He did this, he did that. I think when his wife was sick, a lot of things he did, and that wasn't too kosher, I think. But I can't verify him, so I would never say it. But I heard things like that, you know. Other than that, I can't say. Because Ben, as I remember, Ben didn't stay around here long. Ben didn't stay around here long after the breakup or whatever, Jackson left. He didn't stay around Gary long. If he did, I didn't see him. So I can't say. And I really didn't know him before all this. I only knew him through Steeltown Records, and he was married to a young lady who we were classmates. We came out of school together. Basically, that's it. I wasn't raised close to him or anything like that.
And you don't know specifically exactly what it is you heard about Ben Brown, right? What it is?
No, I can't. You know, I don't like to say stuff that I can't verify. You know what I mean? I just don't. You know, I just don't. I don't. The things I said about Mr. Keith and all the things I say, I lived them. I know them. I'm not making this stuff up. You know, basically.
What?
You know.
Okay. What do you think about this whole project? Do you think it is nourishment for Mr. Keith's soul? Do you actually think that something successful will come out of this? What do you think about the Gordon Keith Untold Story?
Well, I hope it do, because you know, when someone's life is destroyed, you know, when someone accomplishments in life are washed away by and taken the credit by other people like Ben Brown, Motown, all those guys. I mean, how could you discover the Jackson 5? When they got the Jackson 5 was ready. They wasn't no little kids, you know, trying to learn how to sing or play music. They were already developed, and the grunt work that it took to develop them, along with other things, you know, getting them through these clubs, Mr. Lucky's and places like that, getting them exposed, was basically done by Mr. Gordon Keith, because other people had them too, but they couldn't do nothing with them. So they gave them to Mr. Keith. And he the one polished them up and made them marketable. Then a big outfit like Motown, they come in, they have ways of just stealing the talent, and the rest is history, you know. Oh, the greatest entertainer in the world came from Gary, and all they see is Motown. You know, they don't see Mr. Keith, you know, and the grunt work that he did to get them out there and get them exposed, and the records that they made before then. They were already on the map. You know, they were already on the map. So, you know, but I guess that's the way big business is. They steal.
All the time.
They steal.
Wow. So, and as far as the ripples and waves, you know, they were saying at one time Mr. Keith was, Mr. Gordon Keith, they said that a lot of times you found people arguing and not being able to decipher who was Ripples and Waves versus, or was it the Jackson 5? Because they sound so much alike. You had some people saying that it's possible that Mr. Keith, out of spite, when he realized that the Jacksons were wrongfully taken by Motown and Joe Jackson and the rest, that he was going to show Motown that he had another group that could sound just as good, and it would get the sales, have people thinking that it was actually the Jackson 5. I mean, yeah, actually Jackson 5 when it was actually the Ripples and Waves. Some people were saying that Mr. Keith spitefully did that. But upon interviewing Mr. Keith one time, Mr. Keith, I brought it to his attention. Mr. Keith did tell me, and it made sense. He said that's not such, because they were little boys, and they have a voice. They have a tenor. All little boys have a tenor, that high-pitched voice, and that explained why that was. He just happened to have had a group, the Ripples and the Waves, at the same time a group later on, the Jackson 5. What would you say to that?
Well, I remember them having two groups.
Okay.
Jackson the 5 and the Ripple and Waves. And there was other groups, the Novels, the Leonards. There was a lot of groups then, you know, that probably performed for Mr. Keith at the time. You know, because, you know, they knew how to get you in these places, the different places. You couldn't just go up there and say, hey, man, I want to sing tonight. You had to know somebody who was in the entertainment business that you could get you in there. So I heard of both groups before. You know, Jackson 5, Rippling Waves, the Novels, the JCs.
What do you think? Do you think that they sound alike? Do you think that they sound alike?
Well, you know, that's hard to say. It's hard for me to remember back that far, how they even sound. You see what I'm saying? I can't. I just can't, you know.
Okay.
No, I just can't. I just can't. I can't say how they one sound like this. Man, you know, it's just, I just can't say.
That's totally understandable. That's totally understandable. Well, I mean, is there anything else you'd like to share? I mean,
Really not. Basically, I've said what I wanted to say. Basically, I've said what I wanted to say.
okay, and thank you. I'm so grateful to be able to have had this time to interview you. That's so longly wanting to be done. So thank God and thank you.
My name is Herbert Newkirk. I had the distinct pleasure of meeting the Leaners through my wife, Phyllis, who was the only daughter that Ernie and his wife Jeannie had, and I was fortunate enough to be the one to inherit that role as a member of the family.
The Leaner brothers, Ernie and George, could you state where they were located at and what were their functionalities for Wonderful Studios?
Yeah, Wonderful Studios was located at 1827 Michigan in the city of Chicago, and if I remember correctly, the recording stuff was up on the second floor. All the retail information and records and stuff for people that were coming in was downstairs. And of course all the stock and stuff was in the back and that kind of thing. But yeah, and then we had to, sometimes I would take stuff from one store to the other because it had stores on 79th Street and I think there was one on the west side, and that's how Wonderful, and then not Wonderful, the record world was on 18th, and then they had United Records, and then United Records, then there was another, they branched off from United, and then I think it was renamed Reunited Records company and stuff. So. And they did a lot of business on the south side, hired a lot of people. And it was kind of a driving operation. And, you know.
Was it United Records really? Who ran the actual, if you state the names who ran the United, the distribution side, and can you let the world know that also that they were the first black distribution in the world?
Yeah, Ernie and Jordan. Ernie, George, and I think Al Benson were the pioneers of it. And of course, then the kids got involved as they learned from their dad and uncle. The kids would get involved. And in later years, Ernie kind of just sat back and kind of let the Billy and Tony kind of run the operation and stuff. And then he had other people that managed different stores and stuff, different outlets from there. And of course, and it was very, very thriving business back then.
Exactly. And wasn't it also the was the first distributor, black distributor in the nation, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
I recall that's what was the first. And they did a lot of distributing of Marvin Gaye, Dionne Warwick. They had some stuff with the Emotions. The girl from Gary,
Denise Williams.
Denise Williams, and Ernie really loved Phyllis Hyman, and there was quite a few. I think Phyllis Hyman was the one that he really, really liked, you know. And it was just a tragedy the way she lost her life and stuff.
So now we want to go to the final. I mean, not the final, the biggest thing ever. Oh boy, Big Boy,
Okay.
on the recorded on the Wonderful Studios. One of the George Leaner and Ernie Leaner. Could you go into details on? Could you describe that day when you got a call? Did you get a call about the first recordings and they was lost and they were trying to find it because a reporter was looking for it for an article or a topic he was working on? Could you?
Well, let me back up a little bit. It was one of the songwriters, Otis, I don't remember Otis's last name, came to the house, to the farm, and Eric was there, Phyllis was there, Tony was there, and I was there, and we was all looking through stuff and cataloging the stuff and writing down what was in what, and we had notepads with legal pads with lines on them, and when you look at a tape, you would write down everything, and we just had, I don't know, probably every reel that they had was stored in the basement at the farm, and we was just looking for different stuff. And I guess once Eric turned everything over to whoever was doing the stuff, he said, somebody called and said, we're missing something from the Jackson 5s. And Eric asked me, he said, would you look through downstairs and see if you can find something about Big Boy now with the Jacksons? And you know, I'm a retired warden, so I was home alone. So I just went down there and just started looking and looking and looking and looking. And lo and behold, it was a yellow piece of paper that was attached with Scotch tape to the reel box. And I looked at it, and then I said, well, there was a lot of other songs that was on that thing too. And I looked at it, and then I said, well, I'm not sure. So I just took it out of the box, put it on top of the chest freezer, and went upstairs and come back. When I thought about it, I said, now, did he really say Big Boy or what? Because I had never heard the song. Who wrote it, whether it was Otis, whoever was writing down stuff, because everybody had different functions down there when we was going through all that stuff. And I know it wasn't my signature or my handwriting, but anyway, I found it. And I said, I called Eric. He said, you kidding? I said, nope. If this is what you said, Big Boy now. So he hollered and screamed in the phone. And so I took the tape and I gave it to a lovely wife, Phyllis, and she put it in the bedroom. And since I was home during the day, I was always vacuuming the floor and stuff. For some reason, she put it underneath the bed, and then I was vacuuming. I would always hit it when I was doing the vacuum. And then one day, I was vacuuming the floor, and I didn't hit it. So I got down on my knees and I looked under the bed, and he wasn't there. And I said, "What happened to that thing?" Well, she had mailed it to her brother Tony in Maryland, and he was taking it to somebody to do something with it because, you know, it been there so long, it was kind of like crumbling or something. I guess they had to do whatever technology it is to kind of bring it back to life and stuff. But anyway, yeah, I found it, and so.
When you discovered it, how did you feel? I mean, can you describe how did you feel, or did you feel anything about retrieving something?
I didn't know the impact of it. You know, they just said they've been looking for it, and then it dawned on me when somebody said they've been looking for this for 42 years. I said, wow. So I just always tease Eric. I said, well, don't forget my DNA is on it. my fingerprints on it somewhere, and. So he's done several interviews, and that's why I say I love him to death. He's very professional. He don't do nothing in every interview I heard or everything that he writes about it. He always mentions that, you know, my brother-in-law found it and that kind of thing, which is very notable of him. And so,
what I want you to really realize too is this, like you said, your DNA is part of it, and that is very, very true. This is some major piece of history. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, if I had a major piece of history, I would not want anyone to tamper with it. Mm-hmm. By meaning physically, kid playing with it, someone bumping it, or even worse, someone having a name of proclaim a name to fame with it, as far as material.
So that was the guy that was on When You See Live, the white guy that was doing
the one
with the long hair.
Referring to
yeah,
Big Boy, that wonderful record done.
That's James Austin.
Yeah, he's the one that started.
Yeah, because he was doing a report
for Chicago readers.
Yes,
right. He came out to the house. Mm-hmm. Austin, yeah, he came out to the house and I was sitting on the patio, and he talked to me, and Eric was there, and Phyllis was there, and he was doing something for the Chicago readers, and he wanted to take a picture, and I wasn't in on the picture, but because we lived on a farm, and we had a lot of trees back there and stuff, so he took a nice picture of Phyllis and Eric, and it was in the Chicago magazine in Chicago or something, and so.
And the farm where you guys found it, what is that? Was that a storage place where when Ernie and Georgina passed and they just put it there, or is it the children put it there?
Ernie passed, and he had all that stuff up at his house up in Lakeside, Michigan. So her mom was selling the house because she was getting up in age and stuff. So she moved from Chicago to Michigan City. So we took all that record stuff and we cleaned the house out, and we put it on storage bins downstairs at Phyllis and I's house at the farm downstairs, and it was all organized on the shelves and stuff like that, reels and all the other paraphernalia that involved the record companies and stuff. Big Boy, it says Big Boy on the box, on the outside of the box. There was some other stuff on that box too, but that's the one that they were looking for, the Big Boy.
And because you have to realize that's the original stuff to record.
Right.
Okay. So if that is original stuff to record, then again that's the authentic piece.
Yes.
So now you have cats like And then from that, you have to look at the writer, Eddie Silvers. He was part of the Wonderful organization. He was a writer for them. He did some other things too, a saxophonist, something about playing instruments, instructor there at Wonderful. So he had those roles as well. But that was the main thing for him. So he was a writer. So you figure if he was a writer, right, of the Big Boy, then he split jointed the copyrights or the mechanical rights for Big Boy between EPAC.
EPAC.
Am I saying it right?
VAPAC?
VAPAC. I always say it wrong. VAPAC was something created by the Lehner brothers.
Right.
Almost like a BMI.
Yeah, that's their label.
Exactly.
VAPAC.
Right. So that went to between Silvers and VAPAC. Okay. So I'm just trying to just guide you exactly how very important this is before and when someone gets in and tries to have their fame and claim of it. That's why I was stating that is the real deal. That's the original.
That's the real.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly. So nothing else. So that lets you know if that is the case, it is connected with it being registered the proper way. Okay. So now it's registered the proper way. Can you imagine you have someone coming along who's just sick in the skull and who's manipulative and who thinks that they can deceive everybody and says that they discovered it in their house over a rumbled piece of something.
At his mom's
pantry.
It's not yours real,
Yeah.
Mr. Ben Brown, Mr. Gordon's real.
Oh.
Right.
Of the other Big Boy.
Right.
But see,
but it's still
my
links.
understanding is that was recorded in the garage with adults playing the music as
Yes.
opposed to the Jacksons.
Okay, Mr. Newkirk, I was watching YouTube and I ran across this video on Inside Edition and Ben Brown was on there. And Ben Brown was telling Inside Edition that he was getting ready to make a video of I'm a Big Boy and also he said a video and an album that he was going to make with the recording that he found in the rubble at his mom's old house. He just happened to come back to Indiana and went to his mom's house, which is on the Gary Small farm. And he said that he went in his mom's old house and he was looking around through a lot of rubble and stuff, and that he found the recording I'm a Big Boy. Found the recording Big Boy. And so as I listened to him tell Inside Edition this, I'm knowing that he's being fraudulent. Because I know that there's no way that he can have this type of material. And the only thing he could have found, if he found anything in the rubble, was a 45 record. So I'm figuring out how did he have the right to do this when I realized that Mr. Gordon Keith actually was the producer and he had gotten that group and recorded the record Big Boy again after the Lehner brothers had their copy. So now I'm trying to figure out how can Benjamin Brown tell Inside Edition that he found this record and he's finna do these things. He wanted the world to know about this. But he never mentioned Mr. Gordon Keith. He never mentioned anyone else. It's like he was doing this, he was on his own. And I'm like, that's fraudulent to tell the world that. And Inside Edition, why are you paying him to tell us these lies? And by me knowing, and I done met Mr. Gordon Keith, he told me that he had his copy of a Big Boy in the bank, locked up in a vault. So it didn't make sense to me. So now he's lying to the world, and he wants the world to believe this. But these people are still alive that can rebut this story that you're telling us. And the truth shall be known, because I want to call him a fraudulent liar. Like he did the first time with the record I'm a Big Boy when he came to my house when I was 16 to help me, go around and help him, let the world know and everybody know about this recording that my cousins had did. And so I'm like, okay, I didn't mind helping because I used to hear him all the time in East Chicago practicing in the garage at my cousin Matt's house, Catherine's mother's house. And she lived on the next street from my grandmother. And my mother used to go over there all the time when she get off work. That's how I knew all this information. But I'm saying, why is he lying and he's not talking about the real people that was involved? And he also took checks with a dummy company. The name of that dummy company was Brunswick and Inverted Records, that Benjamin Brown had set up as a dummy company. But the checks and the money that was supposed to be going to Mr. Gordon Keith, he was signing them and cashing them. One for $4,000, $2,500, $2,000, and money like that Mr. Gordon never received. But I seen the checks with Mr. Gordon's name on it. We can show you the copies of those checks with Mr. Gordon Keith's name on it, with Ben Brown's name at the bottom, saying that he was representing this guy in his signature and stole the guy's money, stole Mr. Gordon Keith's money. And we have the check, blank checks with his stuff on it. So now if he did that type of stuff then, so what is he trying to do with the record I'm a Big Boy? The same thing that got him over the first time. He's trying to make a full circle 40 years later and use the same music again. But my grandmother told me, well, go around, come around. Now Mr. Gordon Keith has the other copy of a Big Boy that's locked up in the bank vault. So I'm trying to figure out, how did Mr. Benjamin Brown find a record in the rubble in his mom's house? Think about that. Now, what do you think about it? There couldn't be no real, because there's only two copies. The Lena brothers have a copy, and Mr. Gordon Keith has the other copy locked up in the bank. The only thing he could have found in the rubble, if he found anything in the rubble, was the record that was a recording.
Yes, also keep in mind that I got the Jacksons from a combination of E. Rodney Jones and Purvis Spann and the Lena brothers. They gave them to me because they could not get anybody to, let's say, contract the Jacksons, including Motown. Motown turned the Jacksons down through Rodney Jones, Purvis Spann, and the Lena brothers. Motown turned the Jacksons down 5, 6, or 7 times, okay? And practically all of the other major labels of that day, of 1960s, 67, they turned the Jacksons down. So when I talked to some of these people, and the people that were controlling the Jacksons in 1967 were E. Rodney Jones of WVON, Purvis Spann of WVON, and the Lena brothers. They lost faith in the Jacksons, whom they had recorded, and they put those recordings away, way away, so for so long that they just came up last year, I think it was. But in the meantime, they gave the Jacksons to me, and they said, Gordon, we can't do a thing with the Jacksons. They're yours. We wish you the best, man. And so now I did all of the work, okay? And now everybody wants to steal my credit. Even the Lena brothers, of all people, who lost faith in the Jacksons, okay? All I can say now, I heard that they put this record out called Big Boy, but it's not the one that I put out. And to me, if they want to put it out there, that's their business, but I think that they may have to talk to me about it a little bit more, because they sure did lie to me when they told me they did not have any records on the Jacksons. When I asked them if they had anything, recordings on the Jacksons and etc., they told me very clearly they did not have any recordings on the Jacksons. That's what the Lena brothers told me. That is what Eric Lena's, I guess is his father or grandfather, that's what his grandfathers, that's what they told me. Now, we don't want to make a lie out of them, but somebody didn't tell the truth.
Okay.
What you think about that?
My name is Eric Leaner.
And can you tell us what is your relations to Ernie and George Leaner?
Ernie and George Leaner. Ernie is the brother of George and my father, and George was my uncle, Ernie's older brother. And we also had a sister. My aunt Bernice was the third sibling for that trio, who was an attorney, prominent attorney, Bernice Z. Leaner.
Okay, wow, amazing. Can you tell us about the Lost Jackson 5 recordings?
I sure can. And you say that in plural, but I don't know. I don't think Mr. Keith lost his. Maybe he did, but I can't speak on that because I'm not sure about that. As far as I know, there is one. And we possess it. We being my brothers, sisters, and I formed a company. My brother, sister, and I said sisters, and there's only one of them. But we formed a company, and we contributed the assets, which are the masters, into this company that we inherited from my dad, Ernie Leaner. And we cataloged all of the songs that we had with the intent on marketing them, getting them digitally transferred over from analog to digital, so that we could get that music to the market, so that people could know what my dad and uncle did, see what they were responsible for. In that process, somehow we did not see this "I'm a Big Boy Now" demo tape. And we had all these tapes all in boxes, and there was a catalog system that we relied on, apparently, that wasn't complete. So the lost tape is the tape that we were unaware of. Apparently nobody talked about it for, 35, 40 years. But that tape is "I'm a Big Boy Now," and it was a studio demo tape that was done. Joe brought his sons down to the studio, and they recorded that in Wonderful Record Studios back in July of 1967.
Wow, that's really amazing. Who wrote? I was just curious. Who wrote the lyrics for Big Boy?
That's the writer, Eddie Silvers, who is now deceased. And if you run into any of his relatives, we are searching for his next of kin.
Wow, so he's deceased?
Yes.
Oh my. Okay, wow. Because from the last that I heard, that no one knew where he was at. He was just strangely disappeared, but no one knew where he was at.
Yeah, I have no factual information. I researched, and the latest that I received is that he was deceased. So if he's living, stand up and be heard, please, Mr. Silvers.
Yeah. Now, did Mr. Eddie Silvers have any offspring or any children?
I have no idea. And
same here.
Some of the people back in the day could probably help with that. We have asked the company that we signed with to help us to produce records and market them, Secret Stash, as well as our publishing company, Spirit Records. We've asked both of them to please diligently look to see if they could find any relatives of Eddie Silvers.
Yeah, because wow, that's just amazing. It's like he just fell off and disappeared. Do you know how long ago was that it was said that he passed, that he died?
I don't recall. If my memory serves me correct, I want to say in the 90s.
Okay, yeah, that was way back. Okay, wow, very interesting. Is it true that at one time you or someone from your association establishment was looking for Mr. Eddie Silvers to pay him a royalty check of probably like an estimated amount of $100,000?
I can't say that. No.
Okay.
We've been looking for him. I guess even if I knew the amount, that's personal information that we wouldn't divulge anyway. But I could tell you that there's money, but it's not that significant.
Okay, so you guys were actually looking for him to pay him royalties for Big Boy, correct?
We were looking for him to contact him, and in addition, yes, to get royalties his way as well.
Okay. Right. Roger that. And again, to get royalties for Big Boy, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Wow.
And he wrote other songs.
He did?
For the publishing company, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, he wasn't a one song wonder, so.
Didn't he do some things for Tina Turner and Ike before he went to your father and uncle's studio?
I don't know his history. I know that he worked both for us and I say I know. I think, because I didn't experience it, but I'm pretty sure he worked with some other companies at Record Row. I don't know how many, but it was Chess and VJ, or Chess or VJ. I heard he interchanged and worked with the three companies. I don't know if it was simultaneous or if he left us and went to them, or left them and came to Wonderful. But I know he wasn't solely a Wonderful writer. He also was a producer, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was very multitask.
Yes.
Yes. Wow. It says, yes. Is it true that your uncle and dad's version of Big Boy was a demo? And how far did the record go?
It is true that it was a studio demo. The song is a completed song. The brothers played and sang, and we recently picked up a lot of press, actually, both in Rolling Stone as well as the Washington Post, as well as National Public Radio for Minnesota. We picked up a lot of press because Secret Stash, as a part of the reissuance of a lot of the music for Wonderful Records, that is going to be a part of that. It is a full record and has been fully digitized and converted, and will be a bonus track that we're giving to people who subscribe to our entire 6-album collection. So yes, it is a full record. It's not a piece of a record. It is a full version of the song. Different than the song that was released on Steeltown, but nonetheless, full song.
Okay, yeah. And when you speak of the Big Boy, a full song, this is the recent one that was just re-released. I mean, that was just released, not re-released, but just released, right, under Secret Stash?
Correct.
Okay.
This version of the song, previous to this release, and any of the interviews that we did where we allowed them to play snippets of it, had never seen the light of day in the public. We had it digitized from Sonicraft out of New Jersey a few years back, and then we were looking for the right opportunity to present it to the public. But until now, what you saw was basically just clips, sound clips of the song. Nobody had the full version of the song, and it was never released for use or for sale or for any other purpose.
That's deep. That's this. Okay, and I'm gonna keep going on. What makes? That's what I wanted to ask. What makes your version of Big Boy unique from Gordon Keith's Steeltown version of Big Boy? What is the difference?
The difference is, well, first, the kids were younger. This happened in July of '67. So if I got it right, Michael was 8, gonna be 9 in August. The major difference is, one, From what I'm told, because I don't like to speak on other people's products, but from what I'm told, the Steeltown version had Michael Jackson singing and adult musicians playing in the background and singing background vocals as well. So it was Michael with others singing behind him, and I'm guessing the Jackson 5 had to be behind him as well. So maybe it was just the adults playing the music, studio musicians playing the music. But according to Larry Blasingame and Otha Hayes, who were at the Wonderful Studios when this was occurring, they had informed me that this version actually has Michael still singing the leads, his brother's still singing the background, but in addition they're playing the instruments in this version. So the major difference is studio musicians for the Steeltown version and the Jackson 5 playing and singing for our version.
That was very authentic when you have every last one of them starring as themselves.
Correct.
That's pure.
Correct.
You can't compare the two.
Yeah.
They're what they are, individual.
Yeah. And I love that. I hadn't heard his version for a long time. Somebody had kind of done a remix and added a whole bunch of bells and whistles, and I thought that was the original version of Big Boy, but I'm told that was some reissue that a former friend of my dad, Jerry Williams, had done, and it had all sorts of weird horns and nicely done. Very classy product, and I would say that the version that was done at Wonderful was more edgy, more of a Motown, a pre-Motown sound, if you will. They weren't subdued. Everybody played and they let it flow.
Wow.
Yeah, we also, on the flip side of the 45 that were given away, if you buy the subscription to our compilation for Wonderful, the flip side is an instrumental, so you actually will be able to just hear the guys playing.
Ooh. Wow, instrumental. That's almost like a cappella, huh? But not.
Acapella, yeah, so all music, no singing versus all singing, no music.
Right. The raw.
Yes. Yeah, it was a 4-track tape, so when we had it converted, they took several tracks and got the music only tracks. Excuse me. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. This is history. I ain't even worry about that. But wow, that's just amazing. Ooh, it's amazing. I can't get enough of it. But going to the next question, I wanted to say, did Mr. Eddie Silvers ever get the lyrics to Big Boy copywritten?
The lyrics to Big Boy are copywritten, and they were copywritten by Vapec Music, or one of the predecessors of the company that we now own, and they've always remained with Vapec. So the publisher there's a songwriter agreement that he engaged in with Vapec, and they would file for the copyright rights to the song and protect those rights for the writer. So Vapec and Eddie Silvers are partners in Big Boy.
That's what I wanted to know and ask. And I love the way you're answering the questions you just given, because a lot of these questions could be like hey, but yes, and to me that's like getting to the bottom of it, so you know the exact thing and you understand it. So that's why I'm asking that. And so now Mr. Eddie Silvers and Vapec came together in an agreement, correct?
Correct.
And this is what I was wondering now. When he did that, did he have any children? And if he did have any children, did he put it was supposed to go to him? I mean his offsprings. That's what I'm wondering, because if that would be the case, then this would be good for now for his offsprings to come forward. But I understand that. So now when that happens, so that gives us. Well, what I'm trying to say is, since Mr. A has passed, the question is, if he has any offsprings, does that go to his offsprings, the rights, the mechanical rights or whatever, or his portion it was when he was alive? Does it go to his children?
His song, his composition, which the governing instrument is the songwriter agreement. So he said, I have taken this song and I've enlisted VAPAC to publish this song for me. So I need you guys to exploit it, and in exchange for that, I will give you a portion of the proceeds, and I'll take the rest of the proceeds. You follow the Copyright Act. Once a person dies, it goes to their descendants. That's how it works. It goes to their descendants.
Automatically.
Yes.
Gotcha. So that's an even. And what that does, now this is what I like. That's why I'm getting to these kinds of things, because that's the core of it. Whether it's the Lena's version Big Boy or Steeltown's Big Boy or whoever's Big Boy, you can't just go and use it. You have to, if you use either one or the other, they gotta face you. Definitely, Lena's or Mr. Keith.
Yeah, the publisher gives permission for certain things. There's called compulsory licenses, which if you use the song and you don't do anything that would degrade the value of the work, then there's statutory rates that you could pay. They call it a compulsory license. So you can use it as long as you're paying to use the song. Other than that, you generally need to get permission from the publisher to use the song. And we are the publisher of that song. And as you stated, there is a sound recording that was done by Steeltown. There's a sound recording that was done by Wonderful. Both of those sound recordings are of a composition called Big Boy, written by Eddie Silvers, published by VAPAC Music.
And VAPAC Music was like what they have now, or like the Fox, Harry Fox, and BMI, right? That's
well, I won't compare us to them. We're a very small publisher. Harry Fox and BMI is a performance rights society. They go out along with ASCAP and Jezrec, I think is the other one. They go out and they track airplay and collect monies and pay. They were created, I guess, and I don't know the history, so I'll tell you my understanding of it. The BMIs and the ASCAPs, those performance rights societies were created because I think back in the day, publishers would collect money and it wouldn't necessarily make it to the writers. Okay, so what they do is they go out and they track performances, collect money, send the publisher their piece, and they send the writers their piece directly. So it was to ensure that the writers got paid. Harry Fox represents publishers. They go out and negotiate different mechanical deals when people want to use it for a commission. So they make things easier for publishers to get their music out. So they would rep VAPAC. The Harry Fox agency would rep VAPAC on some mechanical licensing deals. I'm told that Inverted Records back in the day released some Big Boy records. Harry Fox probably would have been the one that would have issued them a license to be able to, mechanical license to be able to produce those records. So we're currently researching that at the moment, just to see if we see any history of that, because the rumor mill has said that they've reduced records and possibly not paid to use it, but I have no proof of that. So before I allege that, we're researching it. Is the best I could say.
And that's the best thing to do, to make sure that everything is everything on that end. That makes a whole lot of sense, Mr. Lena. Going to the next question. What is VAPAC Music? Who created it? And for what purpose was it created?
Back in the day, my dad and uncle wanted to create music, and they had a recording studio. So they had the wherewithal to be able to produce music and vocals and put it down and record it to tape. Well, things are documented, and so you have a song, if you're going to represent the songwriter, you need a songwriter agreement. So the song had to be copywritten. VAPAC was formed as the publishing company that would sign the songwriter agreements with the writers who wrote songs, and in exchange for a piece of the song, varied. Sometimes it was 50%, sometimes it was, a smaller percentage, whatever that is. They would sign an agreement with the writer to represent their song, to market it, to exploit it, to have it make money. And that's what VAPAC was created to do. It was created by my dad and my uncle back in the day, and I was too young, so there's no E in VAPAC, but VAPAC actually is an acronym, and it's Verly, which was my Uncle George's wife, Ann, which was their daughter, P, Phyllis is my sister, A is my brother Anthony, Tony, the one who just passed in June, and then C is Curtis, which was Anthony, Curtis Leaner, and Jean Curtis, my stepmom, Tony's mom, and Phyllis's mom. Curtis was her middle name, so it was Verly, Ann, Phyllis, Anthony, Curtis. That's what VAPAC stands for, and we'll never change that name. It's a strong history, and it was made that way for a reason, and we have no inclination to want to change that.
I wouldn't have. Yeah, I wouldn't have either. My God, I mean, that was their intent to put all that in there.
Yes.
That's a love, a
Yes.
structural, generational, historical love. That's the purpose of VAPAC to me,
Yep.
from listening to the way you phrase it.
Yep.
Wow, wonderful. And so, since the Big Boy song material that has been passed down to you is registered under VAPAC, does that lead you to have a mechanical and productional rights to Big Boy?
Well, not me personally. I am a co-owner of the business that holds it, so indirectly we own it. But VAPAC is an entity in itself. It's a corporation, an Illinois corporation, incorporated under the Illinois Business Corporation Act. So it is a corporation, and it actually owns all of the songwriter agreements, and then we in turn own the shares of that company.
Wow. So that's pretty interesting. So it was your father and uncle who created it, just them alone, right? Back then, right?
Yes.
And then as they passed, or before they passed, there were partners that emerged with them?
No, they were the sole owners, and I've never seen the books all the way back. But as far as my knowledge goes, Ernie and George owned VAPAC. Ernie and George also had, and this goes beyond the scope of your story, but I will give you a tidbit. They were both shrewd businessmen, and they're doing things back in the 60s that a lot of people are doing today, but they were doing it early. They actually had a buy-sell agreement, and it was their wish that whichever one of them died first, that the other one would buy the family of the deceased person out. Uncle George preceded my dad in death, and my dad became the sole owner of all of the assets of VAPAC, as well as all of the masters that Wonderful and Impact and Thailand, all of the other labels that produce music. My dad ended up being the sole owner, so I was just lucky enough to be born by the brother named Ernie, and he lived longer than George, and so when Dad passed, his heirs were, my Billy, Tony, and I.
What I love about you, Eric, as far as this, is you're very honest with what you're saying, and everything is right on the money. That's, to me, that's how I looked at it, as because they all had something in common. You had Berry Gordy with WVON, with E. Rodney Jones at WVON, with Purvis Spann at WVON, and your dad and uncle, they all had the connection because they were, well, shrewd if one call it that, businessmen, where they never seen nothing. It's business.
Yes.
And that's how they became. It's like all you guys were like relatives, like but not really relatives, but connected because of that same thing. So wow, so it's just amazing. And it looks like to me that your father and uncle got that from their sister's husband, Mr. Al Benson, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, Al Benson was their uncle.
Yes.
That's my uncle, my great uncle Al Benson.
Yeah.
Who, if you are familiar with the Chicago market and also the Detroit market, Al's daughter was a famous disc jockey here in her own right. Her name is A.J. Parker. That's Al Benson's daughter, and she actually was the first co-host with Doug Banks when he went on his national radio syndication tour. So then she later DJ'd in Detroit as well. But yeah, Al Benson actually lent them the money to go into business, and yeah, they stuck together.
You know, when you say them, you mean your dad and
My dad and
your
my uncle.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And then the story goes, my dad's sister Bernice, they actually had a record store before my dad and uncle went into the business. So yeah, my Aunt Bernice probably helped to have a lot to do with them wanting to go into the record business. And as I said, she was an attorney, and she was a prominent African American attorney back in the day when there weren't very many.
And it's just amazing, like your uncle and dad were hand in hand, right? Was it that George was the one that had all the record labels, and your dad had the distribution, or he distributed, or did they go hand in hand with it?
Well, they were partners, so they did everything together. George handled the day-to-day in the studio, so I hear funny stories about how he cracked the whip. You know, they said he often cussed. The guys who transmitted or transferred our tapes from analog to digital tell me that they have a lot of chatter on the tapes that was pretty funny, and probably a lot of it that would have to be beeped, because apparently my Uncle George was known to drop a swear word from time to time. And then my dad handled the business side of things, and later they became the first black record distributors in the Midwest. Arguably the largest African American owned distribution company, United Record Distributors was the name of it, in the U.S. And they distributed songs down through Motown and the like. So they kind of, once they stopped making music, they started distributing music, and they were partners. And you know, they had other partners in those ventures other than just my dad and my uncle, but they had Ernie's One Stop, which was 2 outlets that sold records to record stores, records and cassette tapes and the like, and accessories. And then he had 4 retail stores called Record Worlds record stores. And you know, my uncle had some silent ownership in those, I believe, but my dad was the prominent name, obviously Ernie's One Stop. His name was on the sign out front.
Wow, that is just amazing to have all this history like that. What if I told you that there is a guy out there by the name of Ben Brown who is going around lying to the world, stating that he's the one that discovered the lost Steeltown, or the lost Jackson recordings of the Jackson 5 Big Boy? Now, what do you think about that?
Well, it's kind of funny because, as far as I know, there's 2 versions of Big Boy. There's the Steeltown version, and we're talking sound recordings. There's only one song. There's one song, and the song is called Big Boy, or I'm a Big Boy Now. It's the same song that was copywritten. It was written 100% by Eddie Silvers. So there's one song, period. There's 2 early recordings of that song. One was done July 13th of 1967, and the other one was done in November of 67 or January 68. I'm not sure of the Steeltown version.
November.
Okay, it was November of the same year.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's 2 early versions of that song. So if there's a 3rd version out there, I'd love to hear it, and I'd love to see when it was created. because as far as I know, the demo that was done in wonderful record studios with Joe Jackson and his sons was the version that we were unaware of, that was discovered several years back, that we're finally bringing to market this year through Secret Stash Records.
And you would have to have had, which you have already, proof of the reel, correct? That one that you had transferred over. That's
speaks
proof.
It speaks for itself.
Exactly.
If we didn't have a version of the song, you wouldn't have heard what I played for you last time we talked, and what Secret Stash has had reproduced for us. I mean, you can't just create it. I mean, it is what it is. There's two versions created in the same year, one earlier than the other. Those are the two versions that I know of as far as the origins of I'm a Big Boy. Anything after that was some sort of a remix or some sort of a combination of something that had already been put out, but there was no other recordings that I know of. I've been wrong before, I could be wrong about this, but I would think that with all of the press that came out several years ago when we found this, and also all the press that's this year now that we're reissuing records and bringing this for the first time to the market, you would think somebody else would come out and say, hey, wait, that's not the first one, we have the first one, and produce the tape. I mean, you can put it in your hand, it's tangible property. You can touch it, you can hold it. You know, it's not intangible, it's tangible, you can touch it. So we have it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because that makes a whole lot of sense. You guys are the ones that have it. Now, did you know who Ben Brown was? Did you know that Ben Brown was a ex-partner of Steeltown?
I've read stories about who he is. I'm not very familiar with him. I do know that he's got some sort of relationship to Big Boy. If he is alleging that he owns or discovered or found, I would say, show me. Because as far as I know, I've seen pictures of the Gordon Keith version. You've seen pictures of our version, featured in Jake Austin's story, and we've used it to create music. So not only did the tape exist, there was music on the tape that we transferred from analog to digital and then produced to a music format that can, now be sold both on wax and on CD and also through download MP3.
Because what Ben Brown has also done, and now this was done 20 years ago, I don't know if you was aware of this also, but he actually went on Inside Edition. Were you aware of that?
I was not.
Yes. Ben Brown went on Inside Edition some 21 years ago, and stated that he was the one who found or relocated in a box. Now you listen to what he's saying. In a box in his mother's abandoned house.
There's many 45s. If he claimed to find a tape, then he should produce that tape.
Exactly.
And if it was 20 years ago, I would have had nothing to say about that find, because as I told you, we didn't even know we had it until several years ago. So for somebody to say that, I wouldn't have contradicted him, because this ought to prove to you, ours was lost. We didn't know about it. So for me to say, oh yeah, I wouldn't have told Ben Brown anything. I didn't know we had it. I didn't even know. I was too young. I didn't know that Jackson 5 and my dad knew each other, let alone recorded together. I was a young tyke. I mean, we're talking back in '67. I was 5 years old, and I lived in California, so I wasn't even here in Chicago back then. So yeah, I wouldn't have complained about anything he said 20 years ago, because I was unaware that we had a master recording that is such a valuable historic find.
And it's not to be spiteful, it's not to be deceitful, it's not to be instigating anything pertaining to Ben Brown, but I think since you are a part of this, this is where the Jacksons had their first history with the Leaners. Okay, to me, the Leaner is a legacy, a historical legacy to me, and to anyone else once they do research will be the same way.
It's sure enough one for me.
Right.
And I want to continue to make the legacy grow and have things left for my descendants.
Exactly.
So.
And because of that, I feel that you should know about the outside stuff like Ben Brown and where is he going. Now, I believe that Inside Edition should have interviewed him first to more into details before they went on, because that was not the truth. And
That was interesting, the whole Inside Edition angle. Like I said, I wouldn't have complained about it because I had no knowledge. That was while the master was in its lost state. So I just, my dad died in 1990, and there's a lot of opportunists. Again, I can't prove him right or wrong. What I can prove is that we have a tape, and that it was the first known tape, according to all of the records that we've seen and all of the claims made. It is the first recording done in a studio by the Jackson 5. And so if Ben has this long lost tape, Ben Brown, I know nothing about it, but I know we have one, and we have made it available to the public now to listen to and to eventually purchase and hold. I got a copy of the 45 at home now from Secret Stash. Did a phenomenal job with it. It's a Big Boy on one side and the instrumental version's on the other side. And it's sitting at home wax right now. I also have a CD. So our proof is in our pudding. So I don't challenge anybody else. I'm just saying I know what I have, and I can't speak for what anybody else has, but if they have it, I think it's easy to produce.
And I think so too, and I think the truth should reveal itself through these kinds of things. And when you mentioned to me as far as your staff or crew or your company is looking into whether or not Ben Brown or Inverted Record had paid you all for the mechanical uses for the songs, for the song Big Boy. Or not. But the way that I'm looking at it from the research that I've done, I'm just sharing this with you. Ben Brown was actually, he sold the Big Boy song along with 11 other of Mr. Keith's Jackson 5 compilation to Inverted Records. For Inverted, of course, to have Brunswick distributed. Also, Ben Brown has, you will see in the documentary that we're going to be doing, is you will see that he has checks that was written, but it has Mr. Keith's name on it, okay? But it has Ben Brown, his signature. He cashed it. Mr. Keith was not aware of this, and he didn't get any money at all for this. Ben Brown, John Kenneth of Inverted Records had given Ben Brown a check for $4,500 when he was giving the Big Boy transfer over to Inverted and things like that. So I'm saying if Mr. Keith did not know of it and he was doing those things, and there was Ben Brown's, he had a motive of an intent to manipulate and deceive, it looks like everything from A to Z would not be right. But I, like what you do, that's your thing, and that's the best way to do that, because you're just securing that, and that's good.
Yeah, well, there's two components in play there. One is he couldn't have sold the rights because the rights reside with the song and the publisher. For Inverted Records to do anything, he had no authority to negotiate a deal on behalf of the mechanical rights that should be paid to the publishers so that the writers can get paid. The second thing in play is if he didn't own the master, he couldn't license the master to Inverted Record. There's two pieces. There's a master license, and then there's the mechanical use. There's the two things. So if he didn't own the master, he couldn't sell the rights. He couldn't license the rights to Inverted Record to do anything for Mr. Keith's version. He didn't have our version, so I'm not worried about that. We just let the public hear it. So I know he didn't sell any mechanical license. Any mechanical license to the song. So that would have been something that he did to Mr. Keith and Mr. Keith alone, because if he owns the master, that master license should have been issued by him for them to be able to use his version of the song. On the other hand, the song, there's only one song. The publisher has to be paid for the mechanical license of the song. That is where my research resides, whereas he would have had to either go through Harry Fox or come through us and say, hey, we want to produce some records, we want to pay mechanical license to do that, and here it is. And again, If he did a compulsory and he paid it at the compulsory rate, that's fine too. But one way or the other, you need permission to do that, and that's, before I go on and make an accusation about something, I want to do my homework. So that's where we stand.
Yeah, that's exactly where we stand, and you want to just know that he's very good with it. Like you said, he had to get those rights, whatever. And some documents you were seeing, he was using Mr. Keith's attorney, that was his attorney, to get Mr. Keith's attorney to send him the property. Like you just said, that's how he could do it. But it didn't work. But that's what I'm saying. He was a slickster. So I just wanted to let you know a little bit about that.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
That. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, knowledge is power. And so, after your staff looks into this Ben Brown investigation, right, and find out that Mr. Brown has not paid you all for your mechanical use, what do you intend to do about the matter at hand, if you wish to say?
Well, it's easy to say. Our job, our fiduciary responsibility is to protect the rights of the writers. And those rights for the writers are protected under the U.S. Copyright Act. And if there's a U.S. Copyright Act violation, then it will be handled accordingly. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, wow. As for the status of your leaner version of the Jackson 5 Big Boy, can you tell us again, what month and year was it released, and what label was it released under?
It was released this month, and it's under the wonderful labels. We're using the label that it was recorded at Wonderful Studios, so it makes sense that it would be under the Wonderful label. And those were assets that my dad and uncle owned, and that we inherited from my dad. So to pay homage to him, it wouldn't make sense to, that's actually, those assets are held by the Leaner Music Group, which is a company that is owned by my sister, and my brothers and I, we formed that to drop those assets into. But it made more sense to stick with the Wonderful label and have that come out under Wonderful.
That's pretty much it as far as that. And Mr. Eric, I just want to thank you so much again for this opportunity to be able to interview you and set the record straight about this Ben Brown thing and things of that nature. This is just wonderful to be a part of this history here, this Leaner legacy history. And I'm honored to be able to have you on my project, to be a part of this. Thank you so much, Mr. Eric.
Well, no problem, Mr. Joseph. I call you Ken. I applaud your work. You worked hard and diligent, and I know that my schedule hasn't always agreed with yours, but you've always hung in there because you want to get the story in. I admire that you want to get the story right, and you sometimes say to me, "Man, this is amazing," and to me, it's not amazing. It's the truth. And it's easy when you tell the truth. That's all I do is tell the truth. Therefore, it's easy to say, and it flows. So I'm not making anything up. I just speak the truth, and I appreciate you including the Leaners in your documentary and in your story. And I learned in the last several years that my family has ties to the Jackson 5, which I've been a big fan for years. So being a part of this only made sense, and it makes me proud of my heritage. And I wish your project much success, and thank you for including me.
In the conclusion of this Gordon Keith Untold story of the Jackson 5, LOST STEELTOWN Recordings, and all of the other projects that we've done pertaining to Mr. Gordon Keith's life, it's still, even to this current day, how people can be of their selfishness and greed. What I mean by that is, you look at the times, the phases that the Jackson 5s went through, from being in Gary, Indiana, the talent shows and all of those things from that point on, to going to Chicago and performing at Guys and Girls and the Green Bunny and the Burning Spear and the Regal Theater and E. Rodney Jones and Purvis Spann and the Leaner Brothers and so forth and so on. They went through all of those phases in such a brief time, And no one could do or have the patience to do what Mr. William Adams, aka Gordon Keith, has done. And then when he was able to do such a thing, like sign the boys to a contract for 6 months, like put the boys into the studio and record their first song ever, Big Boy, like having their songs played at WVON, like getting him a distribution deal with Atlantic Atco Distributions, March the 5th of 1968. Like all of those wonderful things. And just after that happened comes the moment of vultures, deceit, and liars, betrayers, backstabbers. You see, when Mr. Keith did what he did, it was destined for him. It was meant for him to be rewarded with the Jackson 5. And had it would not have been intervened with others' greeds, who knows what the beauty would have overridden with such. But it was because others' greed and selfishness and manipulation became the reason why they stabbed him in the back and didn't rightfully reward him what was his, recognition and money. And then on top of that, to be blackballed for over 46 years or 45 years. That is why I, Kenneth Joseph of Pretty Boy Films, Inc., has decided to take on with such encouragement along with God to tell his story, to reveal to the world exactly who Mr. William Adams is, aka Gordon Keith, to place him in his rightful deeds in a time in history with the Jackson 5. I think it's by fair to Mr. William Adams and to the world that they know the truth. And that's why I'm presenting to you and bringing forth to you the Gordon Keith untold story of the Jackson 5 docu-movies. I'm Kenneth Joseph of Pretty Boy Films, and thanks for tuning in.